We all know that feeling, right? That resignation email hits your inbox. And this time, it's not just anyone. It's your lead data scientist, the linchpin of the whole innovation team. And they're heading to Sydney. So you do the standard thing. You make a desperate counteroffer, maybe a staggering 10% raise, pushing payroll right to the edge.
Yeah.
And it's rejected. The sources we're looking at today say this scene is playing out constantly. They're calling it a catastrophic talent migration crisis.
It is. And our main response so far has been this frantic kind of unsophisticated arms race of salary hikes.
Just throwing money at the problem.
Exactly. And this deep dive is so necessary because the conventional wisdom that we just can't compete with salaries in, say, Dallas or Melbourne is a really dangerous oversimplification.
And a failing strategy.
It's a failing strategy.
Yeah.
So we're going to dive deep into why those golden handcuffs have really lost their luster.
It feels like we're just stuck in this cycle of transactional relationships. We're trying to perpetually, rent loyalty with bigger and bigger paychecks.
Yes, and the sources have a great line for this. They say we're trying to plug a structural dam breach with transactional chewing gum.
I like that.
It really captures it. The core thesis here is that the problem isn't just the money, it's a structural failure. We're failing to engage talent on a deeper psychological level.
So what's the solution they're proposing?
It's a radical shift, moving from hiring employees to cultivating partners. They call it the Intrapreneurship Model.
Entrepreneurship, okay.
And it fundamentally changes the whole dynamic by focusing on two things, equity and genuine autonomy.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with the diagnosis, the fallacy of the golden handcuffs.
Yeah.
Why is this high-cost strategy so unsustainable? I mean, where's the flaw in the thinking?
Well, to really get it, you have to look at the psychology behind it. Specifically, Frederick Herzberg's two-factor theory of motivation.
Okay.
Herzberg drew a really critical line between what he called hygiene factors and motivators.
You can give us a quick, simple analogy for that.
Sure. Think about checking into a hotel. A clean room, working air conditioning, hot water. Those are hygiene factors.
The basics, the things you absolutely expect.
Right. If they're missing, you're deeply dissatisfied. But if they're there, you aren't ecstatic. You're just not unhappy.
Ah, okay, so a high salary is the clean room.
A high salary is the clean room. It prevents dissatisfaction, but it doesn't create loyalty. It doesn't make you love the hotel.
So it's just a defensive move. It stops an employee from being unhappy, maybe stops them from leaving for a quick offer, but it doesn't actually create real engagement.
Precisely. The real motivation, the loyalty that comes from the motivators. Things like a sense of achievement, recognition, real responsibility, growth.
The things that make you want to stay.
Exactly. So when a company just throws a huge salary at someone, say NPR $400,000 a month for a software architect, it's operating exclusively in that defensive hygiene zone.
And even that defensive strategy seems doomed when you're competing on a global stage. You hear it all the time. Local companies just can't win that bidding war.
They absolutely cannot. That local $400,000, while it's a huge amount locally, is being compared to an offer of, I don't know, AUD $9,000 a month in Australia.
And economists will talk about purchasing power parity, right? That the local salary should be competitive when you adjust for cost of living.
They do, but the sources argue that the PPP calculation completely falls apart here.
Why? What's it missing?
It's missing the fact that the foreign offer isn't just a bigger paycheck. It's a superior life package.
A life package? What do you mean by that?
Well, think about it. Locally, on that big salary, you are probably still paying for premium private schools, private health care. You're relying on your own networks for security.
Right.
That AUD 9,000 comes bundled with access to world-class public schools, robust social security, political stability, and, this is critical, a globally respected passport.
So the employee isn't just selling their labor.
No, they're buying an entirely different and, frankly, less fragile operating system for their life and their family's life.
Which makes the cost of staying local seem much, much higher than just the numbers on a spreadsheet.
It does. And this is why responding only with pay raises creates this dangerous psychological trap.
How so?
Because every time you do it, you reinforce a message. The message is, your value to me can be reduced to a bank transfer.
It makes the relationship purely transactional.
Completely. You're basically anointing them as a mercenary whose loyalty is permanently for sale to the highest bidder.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, the golden handcuffs are really just a temporary high-interest lease on your best people.
Yes. And it guarantees you're trapped in a bidding war you are mathematically destined to lose. The employee is now conditioned to listen for the next, even higher bid.
Okay, so if the transactional approach is failing, the pivot has to be structural, moving from employment to partnership. And this is where it gets really interesting, right? This intrapreneurship model.
Exactly. It shifts the focus entirely to those motivators that money can't buy: ownership and autonomy.
The whole goal is to re-engineer the job so that leaving feels less like quitting and more like, what, abandoning your own startup?
That's a perfect way to put it. And it rests on two critical pillars.
Let's take the first one, autonomy. And we're not talking about superficial perks like casual Fridays or a ping pong table.
No, no. This is about the devolution of real authority, real control, real decision-making power.
So what does that actually look like for, say, a senior manager, not the CEO?
It means you transform them into an internal founder. For lead marketing strategists, for example, autonomy means they own their vertical's entire profit and loss statement. The P&L, they own the budget.
So they're not just executing a campaign someone else came up with.
No, they are responsible for the financial success of their entire marketing vertical. They set the strategy, they hire their own people, they decide where the money goes.
But doesn't giving an engineer or manager that much freedom, letting them choose their own tech stack or control their own budget, doesn't that risk chaos? You know, a lack of control?
That's a crucial question. And the sources are clear. Autonomy doesn't mean zero accountability. It means accountability for outcomes, not for methods.
So there are still guardrails.
Of course. You have company-wide KPIs, regular financial reporting. The expectation is that the intrapreneur operates like a mini CEO. Their focus shifts from clocking in hours to delivering that P&L result.
And that satisfies that deep psychological need for self-determination. You're not just a cog in the machine.
You're a pilot in the cockpit. It turns work into a canvas for personal mastery.
And that psychological investment is then cemented by the second pillar, which is equity.
Right. And it's so different from a bonus. A bonus rewards the past. Equity is a stake in the future value you are helping to create.
It's long-term alignment.
It is. The most common tool here is the Employee Stock Ownership Plan, or ESOP.
Can you break that down simply?
Sure. ESOPs give employees the right to buy company shares at a preset, usually very low price. As the company grows over, say, 5 years, the value of those shares goes up, and their personal wealth is now directly tied to the company's long-term success.
So an engineer with ESOPs isn't just coding for a monthly paycheck anymore.
No. They are, as the source puts it, coding to increase the value of their own assets. It completely changes their perspective.
It has to, because now a competitor's 20% salary bump looks a lot less attractive.
It's a totally different calculation. You're weighing that bump against a potentially massive return on your equity stake in a company you're helping to build.
The competitor isn't just poaching an employee anymore. They have to buy out a partner.
Exactly. The question the employee asks themselves changes from, can someone pay me more, to, can another opportunity offer me a better return on the ownership I already have here?
So if this intrapreneurship model is so powerful, why isn't it standard practice everywhere? This must bring us to the hurdles.
It does. And what's fascinating here is that the main obstacles aren't external. They're internal. Yeah. They stem from legal and cultural inertia.
So the biggest threats aren't the foreign recruiters?
Often, no. The biggest threats are your own country's laws and your own company's mindset.
Okay, let's start with the legal one, the archaic regulatory framework.
Specifically, the sources point to the Companies Act of 2063. And while it's fine for, traditional businesses,
Manufacturing, trading.
yes, it is completely ill-equipped for modern, talent-centric service firms where your real assets are your people and their ideas. The process for issuing and taxing ESOPs is described as cumbersome and ambiguous.
Can you give us a quick example of that ambiguity? Why does it stop companies from doing this?
The biggest one is taxation. It's not clear. For example, should an employee pay tax on the potential future value of an option when it's first granted, when it's literally just a piece of paper, or only when it's exercised years later and they get actual cash?
That uncertainty would kill it before it starts.
It creates enormous financial risk and confusion for everyone, and it's a huge deterrent.
And this is in sharp contrast to other economies that have figured this out.
Absolutely. You look at a place like India, which has spent 20 years refining its laws to create a clear, transparent framework for ESOPs. For this region, reforming that Companies Act isn't a luxury. It's critical economic infrastructure.
Okay, so beyond the law, there's the cultural hurdle, the Sethji or family fiefdom mentality.
This is a deep one. It's rooted in generational ownership. Historically, wealth and control are absolute, and they're concentrated within the founding family.
And in that mindset, giving equity to an outsider, even a star performer, feels like.
An unacceptable loss of control, a permanent sharing of power, and erosion of the family's future wealth.
So a founder might be willing to pay a huge salary because that's a controllable expense. It stops when the employee leaves.
Exactly. But equity. Equity means sharing the company's future upside forever.
That's a massive psychological shift.
It is. It requires a leader to stop seeing themselves as the monarch of the firm and start seeing themselves as the chief steward of a collective enterprise. You have to believe that a smaller piece of a much bigger pie is worth more than all of a stagnant one.
So we've got a great solution, intrapreneurship, but it's blocked by law and culture. Is there an intermediate step, a pragmatic tactic for a firm that's constrained right now?
There is. The sources point to phantom stocks, or stock appreciation rights. SARs.
Phantom stocks. Okay, how do they work?
They're really smart. They mimic the financial upside of equity, but without giving away any actual ownership or voting rights.
So you get the financial incentive without the legal headache.
Precisely. The company grants an employee, say, 1,000 phantom shares. They vest over a few years. If the phantom stock is valued at 100 today, and in 3 years it's worth 300,
The company pays them the difference in cash.
the company pays them a cash bonus equal to the appreciation, in that case 200 per share. It perfectly mirrors the long-term financial incentive of real stock ownership.
So it solves the motivation problem.
It does. Without diluting the founder's control or getting tangled up in the Companies Act. It's the best tool for aligning incentives today.
And the sources say that the fact these are virtually unheard of locally points to a huge knowledge gap.
It's a low-hanging fruit solution that very few companies are even aware of. It's a way to buy time until the real reforms can happen.
Let's zoom out then to the strategic outlook. The sources lay out two very different futures, depending on the choices that leaders make now. What happens if we just stick with the status quo?
The status quo scenario is pretty bleak. The hollowing out of talent just gets faster and becomes a self-perpetuating cycle. Mid-sized companies get crushed because they can't match the big multinational salaries or the foreign life packages.
And the country becomes just a training ground.
A perpetual training ground. The sources have a sobering line here. They say, in this future, our most valuable export is not pashmina or hydropower, but human capital.
Wow. Okay, so what's the alternative? The entrepreneurial shift scenario.
This one is much more optimistic. It imagines a critical mass of pioneering firms, maybe 20 or 30 market leaders, that successfully adopt these models with real equity, real autonomy.
And they become talent magnets.
They become talent magnets. They lower their attrition, they build strong internal talent, and their success creates pressure.
A virtuous cycle.
A powerful virtuous cycle.
Right.
Their success forces rivals to follow them, just to compete. And their collective economic weight gives policymakers the political leverage they need to finally reform the Companies Act.
So better firms lead to better laws, which in turn leads to a stronger economy.
Exactly.
But we have to include the hard truth here. The sources add a really important caveat, don't they? This isn't a silver bullet for all migration.
That's vital context. This intrapreneurship model is an elite strategy. It's for the top 5 to 10% of your workforce.
The linchpins.
The linchpins. The people whose departure causes a catastrophic loss of value. It's not designed to solve the broader issue of mass migration, which needs huge state-level interventions in education, public services, and so on.
So the goal isn't zero attrition. That's impossible.
No. The goal is to build a value proposition rooted in ownership and agency that's powerful enough to win the retention war more often than you lose it.
And ultimately, retaining that top talent comes down to meeting those deep psychological motivators, not just the hygiene factors like salary.
The shift is non-negotiable, from transaction to true partnership.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, whether you're running a company in this specific region or you're just grappling with a competitive talent market anywhere?
The question you have to ask yourself isn't just how much you're willing to pay your best people, it's how much control and how much future value you are genuinely willing to share to keep them invested in your success.
It's a fundamental question.
It is. If you're hemorrhaging talent, are you prepared to transition from being the monarch of your firm to being the chief steward of a collective enterprise? That is the hard strategic choice that's facing leadership today.
A challenging thought to end on, but it really does change the entire framework for talent retention. Thank you for diving deep with us into these sources.
It was a fascinating analysis.
Yeah.